Good evening, this is Lurking Lately. I make guides about games that are difficult to get into, but are a lot of fun, whether that's because of bad UI, bad or no tutorials, or a difficult learning curve. In this case, we're going to be playing Kenshi. It's going to be kind of a hybrid let's play and tutorial. I should get the most important stuff out of the way in this first episode, and then we'll just build on all of that as we continue. The idea is that this game has a lot to offer. The UI is fine, and the help section's okay too, but I think that a lot of people, they hear about this game, they try it out, and they're just not prepared for how brutal the game is at the start. Basically, at the start of the game, you're the weakest creature in the entire world, and anything can kill you just by looking at you. So you spend a lot of time running away from danger, sneaking around, or just being clever. But as you start to gear up and gain strength and level up, areas of the world where you used to sneak and be worried about, you can just run through and just cut down your enemies. And I think one of the things that this game does really well is the sense of scale in terms of where you start out to where you end up. Feels earned, and it feels real good when you start to climb up kind of through the levels and start to become more and more powerful. This game probably does it better than any other that I've played. The other thing is that this is the most sandboxy of sandbox RPGs. There's no main quest or side quests, really. It's just you trying to survive in a harsh world. You know, there is lore. You have to go looking for it through conversations or through books you find. But, you know, there's many ways you can play the game. There's no wrong way you can play the game. It's another strength of it. You know, I think a lot of games claim to be sandbox, but you're kind of railroaded. And this one, it really is just, what do you want to do? Those are basically reasons why I would say you want to play this game. It's very open, it's very freeform. It gives you a real fun sense of moving forward and momentum. But there are downsides. It's not the most optimized, I would say, of games. There are bugs. And because it's all just one giant open world, there's no cells that open up or close as you move between regions. I would not recommend playing this game if you don't have a solid state drive. Back when it first came out, I still had a regular hard drive, and kind of annoying sometimes when areas would load in, but I didn't realize how much better it was until after I started playing on a solid state. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Start off in the main menu, and you have a bunch of options, your standard options: a new game, continue, load game, import game. There's not much to say about that except for import game. Basically, if the game becomes buggy and unstable, you can click on import game and then choose whatever load you want from your save games, and it will start the world fresh with certain parameters that you choose without losing your progress. That can be used if, for example, certain individuals die before you even meet them, if town guards suddenly disappear from the town you're in, that kind of thing. It also can be used to exploit the game, but we're not going to go into that. I'm sure you'll figure out how it can be done on your own. With that, let's get started a new game. Start with a bunch of different scenarios you can do. The classic is Wanderer, and that's the one we're going to be playing because I think that's the one most people will choose. There are easier starts like Wandering Trader, and the Freedom Seekers, assuming you don't build a base right away. And then there are also harder starts, but we'll start with the average version. Before you start a game, you can go into advanced options. Hunger time, basically, these are multipliers of how long it takes for you to experience hunger. So if you move it to the right, like I moved it to 1.25, that means that it will take 125% of the time it normally does for you to gain kind of a unit of hunger. And if I was to move it down, obviously, like to 0.9, then it would only take 90% of the time for your characters to kind of gain hunger. But we'll leave that at default. But if you do find that you're not able to feed your characters and they're dying of hunger and it's just too hard for you, feel free to move the slider to the right. All this other stuff is kind of self-explanatory. Chance of death, global damage multiplier, production speed, research speed, building speed. We'll have that set on all defaults. Number of nests. Basically, enemies spawn from nests. And if you want more enemies, move the slider to the right. If you want less enemies, move the slider to the left. Bandits loot the player, we're going to leave that on. Basically, not everything wants to kill and eat you. Some people just want to beat you up and rob you. So this means that if your entire party goes down, enemies will loot your players and move on. They won't take everything, but they will take things from you. And then finally, easy prospecting we're going to leave off. That basically means that if you're going to search for a base site and you want to prospect the area for, how good the water is, how much stone there is nearby, all that kind of stuff, you need a high science skill to have accurate readings, or you can just click on easy prospecting and then it doesn't even factor in the science. But we'll leave it all as it is, and then we'll just begin. Alright, so we're in the character creation screen. You can choose from different races, so you've got human, skeleton, hive, and Shek. There are also sub-races, so for humans you have Greenlander and Scorchlander. There's none for skeletons. Hivers have Hive Prince, Worker Drones, and Soldiers, and the Shek just have the Shek. This is a brutal game, and kind of in a post-apocalyptic setting, and a lot of societal ills are still here. In this game you have slavery. You can be enslaved. There's also racism with some factions. There's sexism with some factions. So in addition to the explanations here and the bonuses and the negatives, there's also stuff they don't talk about. So I'll just talk about it real quickly. Basically, there's a faction called the Holy Nation. They're kind of religious zealots, and they are anti-women, and they are anti-anybody who's not a Greenlander. And they're fairly powerful. So if it's your first game, it may not be a bad idea just to play a male Greenlander, or at the very least have a male Greenlander in your party to talk to them when you're going through their territory. There's Scorchlanders too. I guess we can talk about these stats down here. These stats just basically say, what the base hit points are, and then what the experience bonuses and penalties are. So for Greenlanders, it's always going to be plus 20% experience gain in farming, cooking, and science. And for Scorchlanders, it's going to be plus 10% to dexterity, experience gain, 20 to athletics, stealth, armor smithing, weaponsmithing, and dodging, and then a negative 20% experience gain to farming, cooking, laboring, and a negative 10% to strength. For skeletons, a lot of veteran players will tell you skeletons are the most powerful people to play as in the game, and that is correct, but they run into even worse problems. For example, the Holy Nation considers them to be unholy and will attack them on sight. The good news is you don't have to eat, so you never have to worry about hunger. Bad news is that you can't really heal normally. You have to either buy or make skeleton repair kits, which can be very expensive early game, and you can't, even if you repair yourself, you will accumulate damage over time that even repair kits can't heal, and you'll have to find something called a skeleton repair bed to rest in. And, if you know where one is, it's not that big of an issue. But if you don't, you're just starting the game, this may be a more difficult start. So I wouldn't recommend Skeleton for your first character that you play as. Hivers are Hivers. Holy Nation will look down on them, but they're not that discriminated against. And the Shek are your kind of classic warrior types. I'm going to start off by playing a male Scorchlander, and I'm going to call him Lurking Lately. You can change, their different stances, skin tone, all this kind of stuff, height, weight, all that stuff. And then when you've finally done everything that you want, you can actually export it, and it'll basically export to whatever name you have, so that in the future, if you want to play a new game but keep the same looking character, you can just click import and import. So I'm just going to import my guy here that I already created once before, and with that we'll get started. So about 99% of the time you're going to start off here in the hub. It's kind of your starter town in your starter area, and that's good because this is the area with the weakest enemies, and it's the kind of the place where you'll train up and get started. Basic camera controls. To turn the camera, right it's E, left is Q. To pan the camera is WASD. If you ever want to lock the camera on a person, You can just double click them in the menu and the camera will follow them. Also, you can change the angle of the camera by holding your center mouse wheel and then pushing up and down. That's useful when you enter buildings because the camera can be a little wonky. If you want to just click on things to get more information, it's left click. You can also get more information from people. And if you want to move, you just right click where you want to go. If these were hostiles, then you could just right click on them and you would start attacking that individual character. Or you can hold down right click and just say attack all. So if you have a bunch of people and you have a bunch of hostile people, hold down right click, attack all, and they'll kind of square off against each other. First thing we're going to do is we're going to run over here. And just right click on this door to open it up. Spacebar to pause, by the way. And if you ever enter a building or a new area, it's a good thing to hold down the Alt key and it'll highlight everything that's sitting around here. And if you want to pick it up, you can't actually, for some reason, you can't click on the name. You have to actually zoom in on the item and then right click. Now, if it's named and it's white, then that means no one claims ownership of it, and you can just pick it up and take it and no one will care. If it's red text, that means it's owned, and so if people catch you taking it, and you do that just by holding down Alt and picking up, that's to steal. You will use your steal skill, and if you do a good job, you can steal it without nobody noticing. If you do a bad job, they will notice, and they'll either yell at you, tell you to put it back, call you a thief and attack you, and you may get a bounty for an area. So be careful when you're stealing stuff. Sometimes it's worth it, and there will be instances in this run where we will be stealing items, but I won't be doing it too much. Stealing can be a difficult stat to increase if you don't use in-game exploits, so we'll stay away from it. But that said, stealing is a perfectly viable build, like kind of a thief build, and so it's fun to try out. So I'm just going to go in this building and take everything that isn't bolted down, because we're going to sell most of these items. Let's check our inventory. Okay, so by the way, shortcut keys. For your character sheet, it's C. For your inventory, it's I. Let's see, what else? Map is M. Your map isn't going to look like my map. I'm using several mods for this run. I will have the mod list in the description of this video. And just so you are aware, I have a mod which adds region borders, region names, and roads. If you are playing just a vanilla game, you wouldn't have the roads, zone names, and like zone borders. I find it useful because, even if you don't know what's out there necessarily, you can always just like zoom in and right click on a road, and your guy will, eventually path their way over there. Hopefully in a more elegant way along the roads or the fastest route, but pathfinding is kind of an issue in this game, so just be aware of that. In here also are beds. Basically, if you want to interact with an item, you hover over it, the cursor will kind of change, and you can right click, so it'll give you options of what you can do. You can sleep in the bed. As you can see here, beds have a healing bonus of 8 times. So basically, as you fight creatures and individuals, you're going to take damage. And you can use first aid kits to kind of stop any bleeding damage, but it will only, your health in terms of your different limbs and your blood, they'll only increase slowly over time. So if you're just running around, from one place to another, it'll slowly increase in health. But if you go into a bed and sleep in it, it'll heal 8 times as fast. If you're just using a bedroll or a camp bed, it'll heal 4 times as fast. So in terms of also context keys, you'll see here that this chest is locked. So I'm just going to right click on it. You have 3 options: pick lock, use tools, and use strength. You see here I've got a percentage chance of being able to pick the lock. Now that doesn't mean you have a 14% chance and then it's locked forever. It just means you have a 14% chance to do it in a first round. And as you increase lockpick skill, the chance of you picking the lock gets higher and higher. Use tools. Tools are items in your inventory called tools. They're noisy, it takes a long time, but you can basically use tools to hack through a lock. And using strength I've actually never used, so I don't know how effective that is. But in this case, we want to train up our lock-picking skill a little bit. So I'm just going to get him close to there. I'm going to right-click, tell him to pick the lock. And he's going to start picking the lock. Now, the way you level up in this game is there's no like level 1, 2, or 3. It's all done via using skills. So for example, we're currently trying to pick a lock, so you can see that our lock-picking skill is slowly going up each time we fail to open the lock. So eventually this is going to get to lock-picking level 2. Almost there. And so you're actually at this weird situation where sometimes it's better to fail picking a lock multiple times because it'll give you much more experience in the lock picking skill than just being successful on like a 14% chance. You'll notice here, just looking at our character, we're all ones in every single skill except for 0 in some of them, and obviously lockpicking is starting to level up. Skills increase at kind of a geometric rate, or rather, the time it takes to raise a skill raises geometrically. So at first, it's real easy to level up, let's say like the first 30 levels, and then it takes progressively longer and it's harder to keep leveling up whatever it is you're trying to level up. So it's good because it kind of extends the length of how much time it takes you to get through the game to get to kind of a top tier. I believe that skills range all the way up to 100, although I will say that I have seen some enemies go above 100, so I guess that's theoretically possible. I've never played a game long enough to get above 100. I don't think I've ever even gotten to 100 skill in anything, now that I think about it, but it's not necessary. Basically, if you're in like the 30s, then you're pretty good at that skill. If you're in the 50s, it's even better, and then it just keeps getting better after that. While we're waiting for him to pick the lock as well, we can talk about speed. Obviously, spacebar to pause, but you can pause here. You can do double speed, you can do triple speed, and that seemed to do the trick. So let's right click and loot the chest. And we got some items here. A lot of holy flames here. The Holy Flame is kind of the Holy Nation's Bible. It is useful to carry around if you're ever in Holy Nation lands, because if you have a male Greenlander holding it, and a guard or a paladin or some kind of official starts to hassle you, you can try to talk them out of enslaving your non-human companions or attacking you by showing that you're a faithful adherent to their religion. As I said, lore comes in drips and drabs, and kind of the world building as well, so you can see some of it here in these books. I'm not going to sit here and read it to you, but just know that, look out for books just for information about the world and that kind of thing. So I've basically filled our inventory as much as we can. So I'm going to run over here to the bar and sell off most of the items. I guess also while we're here, we can talk about what all these other buttons do. Floor. Let's see if I can have a good example of that. So floor 0 is just ground level. In fact, let's run over here and we can just try it out. So floor 0 is here. Now let's say we wanted to go up one level. We just go floor 1, and you can go up a level and click to where you want to move. Floor 2, and finally floor 3. So these are just, instead of short keys, you just have the options to get into your inventory here, your character page here, your map here, your tech, which we'll talk about later once we get to another town, your squad, which we'll talk about later when we get more recruits, and a help section as well. This is also your build button, but again, we're going to talk about that later. And that's pretty much it for now. We'll kind of talk about things as they come up. All right, so whenever you go into a bar, it's nice to just kind of click on people, see who's there. If there's anyone who's, like, for instance, this person right here is a drifter, and you can talk to them. It means that you can probably recruit them for a fee. Now, another mod that I have for this game is more unique recruits, which basically force spawns all the unique recruits. In a normal game, there's a chance that a unique recruit will not spawn into the game. They'll just be replaced with a generic recruit. But with the mod that I'm using, I know that the general area of where all the recruits will spawn, and I know that they will spawn into the game. So that's another mod that I'm using. And what do unique recruits mean? So this is just your generic recruit. They can have just any number of stats. Basically, the more expensive generic recruit is, the better their stats will be, at least at something. And when you talk to them and you're in the process of recruiting them, they'll tell you what they're good at. Unique recruits tend to be one of three things. They tend to be either free, they tend to either have higher stats than the generic recruits, or they have unique dialogue. So I think they add a lot to the game, and that's why I always use the more unique recruits mod. Let's talk to the bartender. And let's sell off our junk here that we're not going to need. So this hacksaw can be used if you have shackles on. Basically, if someone puts shackles on you, you become a slave, and so it can be used for escape. But you can also lockpick your shackles. So I don't find this tool useful at all. I never carry it around. Stuff like cups, they can be used for crafting some items, but we're not going to worry about that now. And then we got a bunch of wooden bowls that have no use whatsoever. They're just general clutter items. Now, what we have here is food. There is a hunger mechanic in the game. You can see hunger here. As time moves on, your hunger meter will start to drop. But basically, once this green bar goes away, you'll enter a malnourished state. But once you get malnourished, you start to have penalties to all your stats and everything you try to do, which is bad. And if you go hungry long enough, then you will die of starvation. So we're going to keep the food because food is fairly expensive. As you can see here, we have 1,106 cats. Even after you start with 1,000, so we only got 106 cats from looting that place. And you'll see here, like this Gohan, it's worth 499 cats. And this right here, it's worth 253 cats if you were to buy it. And this is 167 cats. So food can be expensive. Obviously, the more expensive the food, the more nutritious it is. So if you're growing your own food or making your own food, you want to make more nutritious food because it will increase your hunger bar more and keep you satiated longer. However, if you're buying from a store, and we're going to be doing that early on, the cheapest item to buy is a dried meat. Now, if you look here, it's got a nutrition level of 15 nutrient units, and it's priced at 71 cats, right? And then let's look at the meat wrap. Well, that's 50 nutrient units, so a little over 3 times as much nutrition. But if you were to multiply the value of this dried meat, 3 times that would be 210, so let's say like 250 cats. But here this is worth 517 cats. This is worth a little bit less. What else do we have? Or do we have any other food? We've got some rice, which is 25 nutrient units. But again, it's 204 cats, and that's less than twice this. So the higher the grade of the food, the more expensive it is. So if you're going to be buying food and you're not worried about, I guess, inventory space, buy all the dried meat you can. We're also going to sell off one of these holy flames. I do want to keep one because it is useful to have a holy flame in your inventory for later, because we will be going into Holy Lands eventually, and it's just nice to have one available. If you don't spawn with loot, I guess we can talk about loot as well. Loot spawns based on a loot table, so you're not going to get what I find here in this chest. It's all kind of randomized a little bit. But don't worry if you don't find like a holy flame here in your game. You can always buy it from like any bartender or just about any vendor from any holy city. So, you basically just send a Greenlander into town, he buys it, and then you kind of move in with your squad. So we're going to sell the rest of this junk as well. And that's the bottle. One of the holy flames. We're going to keep all the food. We'll sell the booze. And that is pretty much everything we're going to do here. I don't see any recruit here that I want. So let's start moving out of here. Oh, I guess another thing we can do is talk about weapons and armor as well. Now, you'll see here that we have a iron club. You'll see it's a blunt weapon. It has a cutting damage modifier of 0.04, a blunt damage modifier of 0.09, a blood loss modifier of 0.3, a -1 attack bonus, -1 defense bonus, and a +2 indoors bonus. And it does 10% less damage to animals. It's only 2 kilograms, so it's very light. And it's only worth 180 cats. You'll only sell it for 45. And then below the description of the item, you'll see that the model is rusted junk. Now, basically, as you move up in model types, the cutting damage and or the blunt damage of that weapon, that number is going to increase. So right now, like let's say we went up a weapon grade in cutting damage. Maybe the next one up would be 0.06 or 0.08. And the math that's done to calculate damage is very complicated. So just basic rule of thumb is when you find a new weapon, take a look at the cutting and blunt damage and kind of add them up. And if that number is greater than adding up the blunt and cut damage of your current weapon, unless you have a certain reason for having it, feel free to replace it. Also, things to note, blunt versus cutting damage. Cutting damage is based off of dexterity mostly, and then blunt damage is based mostly off of strength. So basically, that number in there, along with other factors, it's going to be multiplied against your base. Well, for cutting, it's going to be multiplied against your base dexterity, and for blunt, it's going to be multiplied off of your base strength. Also, as you fight with weapons, you will raise up. Well, there's many ways to raise your base stats, and that's strength, toughness, dexterity, and perception. And in the description here, it will tell you how to raise it. So, for example, for strength, you can just walk around heavily encumbered, and your strength will slowly go up. At least, for the first, bunch of levels. For toughness, the more hits you take, it'll go up. For dexterity, really the only way to do it is through fighting with martial arts or cut damage. Because cut damage from your weapon scales off of dexterity. That's how you can raise your dexterity. Obviously, fighting with a blunt weapon or mostly blunt damage will raise the strength as well. And then perception can mostly be raised by either using turrets or shooting people with crossbows. Crossbows is kind of a catch-all term in this game. You're going to see some crossbows that look an awful lot like guns, and that's because this is a post-apocalyptic setting. So we're pretty much ready to get out of this town. This was designed to be a starter town, and you can see it from all the wrecked buildings that you can buy and rebuild. And I guess the idea is that you could own a lot of real estate in this town and really, make it your home. The inherent drawbacks of this place is that there's no gate guards. If an enemy were to follow you into the bar or into the Shinobi Thieves Tower over there, then yeah, those NPCs would help fight, but there's still going to be packs of enemies coming in and attacking you occasionally, so that's bad. The other thing is it's only got one shop, two if you count the Shinobi Thieves, and I do not count them as a really great place to sell most items. And you have to be a member as well to even get that, but we'll talk about that later. And then the final thing that's the problem with this location is there aren't that many good resources around here. You've got some iron, I believe some copper down here as well. but it's just not that great of a spot. So we're going to run out of here and look at our map. Now, because we have the Lone Wanderer start, we already know where Squinn is, but this is the town that we're actually going to try to go to. So we're just basically going to run down here and then across here, and we're going to run to Squinn. So I'll just put it on fastest mode. If we run into any trouble, we're just going to run away from it. And since we're lightly encumbered, I think we should be okay, as long as, they don't get the jump on us. Now, this is like a surprisingly pretty game for how old it is. Especially if you're zoomed in, it looks pretty good. The character models are good, all that kind of stuff. The animations are good. However, especially early in the game, you want to be zoomed out as far as you can. And you want to kind of have your view of the horizon, just so you're not running into enemies. Other things that you can do is, if you go into your map and you pick just a random spot and click on it, your character will path there. Whether it's the most optimal path, I'm not sure. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. He's just going to run in the road. And over here in the distance, we can already see Squinn. Now, I think Squinn is probably the safest and easiest starting area. And I guess this is also a good time to explain what the goals of this guide are. The goals of this guide are to just teach you the very basics that you need to get out there and do your thing. It will be a full Let's Play, so I am going to expand further on my ideas and what I think is the most cautious approach for a new player. It is not the most efficient way of doing things. It's not even the most fun way, but it does give you kind of a structure on how to start off so that you don't starve to death, so you're not immediately murdered and enslaved. And enslavement isn't the end of the world. You can escape as a slave, but it's kind of a hassle if you don't know the game mechanics that well. And so I'm going to kind of teach you a very cautious method of starting out. And then from there, you can choose to either continue to watch additional episodes, or you can just use that knowledge that you have to have kind of a safe base to work from and do your own thing from there. So one of the reasons why I like Squinn is there's a lot of mineral resources there. So we've got an iron resource, which gives you 100% quality iron. You can have up to 3 workers work on it. It has a max efficiency of 120%. Right next to it is a copper resource. You can have up to 2 workers on it. It's 80% quality, so that's really good. Over here's another copper node resource which 1 person can use. Over here's another iron that 3 people can use. And there's going to be more resources over here. And so in case you haven't guessed it yet, the name of the early game is going to be mining. It's very safe. It's fairly, in terms of time efficiency, it's actually very efficient. And if we ever run into problems with enemies attacking us, we can just kite them back to these gate guards, and then once these gate guards engage them in combat because they're assaulting just an innocent person, we can jump in, try to help out in the fight, try to raise our fighting stats a little bit, and then loot the bodies after they fall, and either use that equipment for ourselves or sell it in town. So we're going to be spending a lot of time early game in this town and around this area. We are going to be doing some traveling, but first we got to get our base set up and just have things moving so that we can make a little bit of money reliably and safely, and have a base of operations. So we're going to run in, and just like in the last town, there's a bar here. There's also beds for rent, so if you don't have a base in a town and you're kind of beat up, you can pay, and it tells you the amount you have to pay to use a bed. If you catch someone with a bounty, you can drop them off to this gentleman in the town's police station. Every town's going to have almost every town's going to have a police station. Almost every town's going to have a bar. That's pretty much standard. These other shops, they change based on where you are. But again, if you want to drop off bounties, just come over to him carrying the bounty over your shoulder, and you'll get possibly an opinion boost, and you'll get some money. This is an armor shop, so why don't we just run in there so we can talk about armor as well. All right, so we can just talk, and you see here, first of all, he's got blueprints for sale. They're very expensive, but if you want to craft your own items, you can buy the blueprints from various vendors. I don't think you can actually find them out in the wild, so you have to buy them from various vendors. But if someone knows better than me, they can chime in and let me know. Then you've got actual armor here. So for example, this plate jacket, it's a prototype grade, which is like the worst version. So it's got a blunt resistance of 1%, a cut resistance of 3%, and a cut resistance efficiency of 70%. Resists 1 point of harpoon damage, got some protections against acid, 40%, and it'll tell you the coverage. So this piece of armor actually isn't that great because it doesn't block much blunt. It doesn't have much resistance to blunt or cut. But that's because it's of poor quality. If you go over here, you'll see it's shoddy grade, and you'll see here that the blunt resistance has gone up from 1% to 7%. Cut resistance from 3 to 12. 3 to 12. So basically, you want higher grades of armor, if at all possible. You want to get, well, there's two schools of thought. So you can walk around either unarmored or lightly armored, and so you're not going to have much in the way of blunt and cut resistance, but you will level up your dodge, and it's good not to be hit. However, things tend to hit you in this game. I've never had much luck with a full squad of people that just dodge, but if you've had a different experience, feel free to let me know in the comments. So what you want is the highest blunt and cut resistance that you can find. Again, I'm not going to get into the formulas because frankly it's too complicated for me to know, but bigger number is better. There's other stuff to consider, however. First is coverage. Now you can see here that this white plate jacket has 100% coverage of your stomach, chest, right arm, and left arm. And that's very good. The more coverage you have over more body parts, that's also desirable. However, there are things that aren't good, right? You look here and it says skills, stealth effect, and it's got a red 0.54. What that means is that, let's say you had 10 stealth skill and you were sneaking, wearing this armor would bring it down to an effective skill of 5.4. So it basically cuts your sneaking in half. It cuts your ability with crossbows but it reduces it by 20%. So it's base 80. It reduces your dodge skill to 80% of what it would be. It reduces your dexterity to 95% of what it would be. And it has a -5 martial arts bonus. Now you'll see here if we go to the prototype or the worse, then it's even worse. The bad stuff is worse. So stealth effect is 0.72. Well, actually, that's not that bad. But you'll see here, this also adds like a negative to your assassination skill. So you don't want many negative skill modifiers on skills that you use. So for example, if I had a ranged guy, I probably wouldn't want him to wear this armor because they're ranged, so they don't need that much armor, and I don't want them reducing their crossbow skill, right? For some reason, you had everyone sneaking. Maybe this isn't the best armor to wear. But basically, as you go up in grades, from prototype to shoddy to standard to high to specialist to masterwork, the negative bonuses they're less. The penalties are lower, the resistances are higher, and so you always want to see if you can get better quality armor. Again, we'll talk more about armor because I plan on using this guy or maybe someone else to be crafters and craft our own using blueprints that we buy. But basically, you want blunt and cut to be as high as, well, unless you're going for light armor, you want blunt and cut to be as high as possible. You want as much coverage as possible and as few negatives to your skills as possible. And then you can just kind of mix and match and choose what it is you want to do. You have different slots, so you've got a shirt slot, a pants slot, boots, armor, and head. Not every race is going to be able to wear everything. For example, skeletons can only wear armor and pants. Hivers can wear armor, pants, certain types of shirts, and depending on the subrace of Hiver, some are also able to wear helmets, but I believe it's only the prince, and so on and so forth. So what that means effectively is if you're running a skeleton, you may not be able to have as much protection on your feet or your head or your shirt. For skeletons, it's kind of balanced out by the fact that they have stronger limbs than humans. But for hivers, that can be a problem as well because they also have weaker limbs than your standard human. So it's all stuff to consider. You can always just go into a store and browse and see what it is that you like. And I guess the first thing we'll do is we'll run into this bar and we'll see if there's any kind of oh yeah, I guess something else we should talk about. So no one's really none of the major factions are really good guys in this game. Some are just less horrible than others. The Shek being a prime example. I don't want to get too much into the lore, but basically the Shek suffered a number of military defeats. So despite being a proud warrior race that loves to get into battle, the current queen said, hey, we got to stop attacking and killing other races just for the glory of war. And some people aren't happy about it. So this guy, you'll get some casual racism coming your way if you're not a Shek. And then you'll get a guy challenging you to a fight. You can attack him, but you will be the person committing the crime of assault, so all the guards will jump you. So this guy's just basically trying to bait you into a fight so that you fight them and then you get killed either by him or by the guards. So don't take the bait. Have a stiff upper lip and realize that in terms of how you're treated, these actually aren't even the worst guys in the games. With that, we'll go into the bar and we'll see who's in here. We got a shop guard. We've got the actual merchant here. Regular Shek warrior. And just another shop guard up here. Okay, so nothing really to note here. But if you need to buy more food, it's over here. We've got a weapon shop. We've got a ruined building. And you'll see here it's for sale for just 7,200 cats. And we are going to buy this, rebuild it, and this is going to be our base of operations to start. And then we'll go over here and see what else is here. We've got another bar that we'll check out. And you got your barkeep. We've got Rain the Giant. She is a unique recruit, and she's a pretty great fighter. We've got some thieves. And that's pretty much it. I don't see anybody up here either. Alright, so Ruka should... Oh, it's too bad. I usually Ruka spawns here. What a bummer. We may have to do something that I normally wouldn't do at the start of a game. Let's just check here to make sure we haven't missed anybody. Got a pacifier, a Shek warrior, shop guard. No, oh, what a bummer. What a bummer. Okay, well, I guess what we can do. I do kind of want to pick up a recruit, but we'll act as we'll act as if we don't know what's out there. Over here's a general store. You can buy supplies for future base building, for planting crops, all that kind of stuff here. Also research books. You'll see here also that there are other residences that are well built and for sale, but they're much more expensive. So if you buy them, you get all the furnishings inside, and you don't have to rebuild it, but it's not a very good deal. And then over here is kind of a travel gear store. It's got a lot of useful equipment in here. We'll be selling stuff in here, so we'll be able to look through their stock. Another ruined building. We're not going to buy this one or rebuild it. And we're just going to start off by running out here. Yeah, we're going to run out here. I've always had luck over here. And you'll see here there's more nodes to mine as well. You've got, a copper for 2 people. You've got a copper for 1 person, and the iron that we saw earlier. Actually, I think we're going to go ahead and mine this because we only have 1 person currently. So let's just, let's mine it. Now, This is also a good time to talk about jobs, and I guess while we're at it, we'll talk about this block of buttons here as well. So what do these do? Let's click on our character, and let's take a look at their defense. We've got a -1 defense, and that, as you remember, is because our Iron Club gives us a -1 defense. But if we were to hit the block, then suddenly our effective defense is 19, so 20 minus 1. Block means that when there is combat, you will get the bonus to your defense, but you will only block. You won't take any aggressive action in terms of attacking. A hold means that if an enemy comes close to you or within range of your ranged units, you will attack, but you won't chase anybody in any particular direction. This can be useful if you're fighting near an environmental hazard, like, I don't know, a big pond of acid, and you don't want to chase an enemy into there, or even water, which will slow you down. It's also useful for your ranged units. Less useful, but still useful, so that's something to consider. Passive means that you will not fight back or get aggressive, even if there are aggressive creatures or enemies around you. It does have its uses, but we'll get into that later. Jobs, and this is kind of why we started to talk about this. So let's talk about jobs. Right now, we don't have any jobs assigned. But what I do want him to do is I want him to mine this copper node over here. Now you can just right-click and hit use, or you can right-click and hold the shift button down and then click on use with the left click of your mouse. And this will add a job to your character. Now right now, the effect of this will be limited. However, by the end of this episode, you will understand how good this is. So this is your one job, and it's queued in. So even if I was to tell my guy, run over here, he would do that, and then he'd start running towards his job, which is to mine the copper. Copper per unit sells for more than iron, so that's what we're going to be starting off mining at first. So we've got it on fastest speed. We're slowly starting to fill up this progress bar. Once it's reached, it'll be 1 unit of copper in this quote-unquote machine. That's what it's called in the game. This is going very slowly for us, but as our laboring skill increases, they will mine copper faster and faster. Just like if we made this guy, I don't know, work on light armor. At first, it would be of poor quality, and it would take a very long time, but as their skill increases, speed increases, and quality increases. With stuff like mining, there's no such thing as quality, so it's just about speed. You can harvest up to 5 units of copper or iron in a machine before it gets full. So right now, if we were to zoom in, we'll see this guy using this iron pick, which I don't know exactly where he stored it, but it's a good thing he had it on file. And he's going to keep just hammering away at this, and it's going to keep adding copper to this node, so to speak. And this is going rather slowly, which is not great. Other things that will affect the speed of you mining resources, or really doing any type of job, that is going to the amount of light you have. So there's nothing we can do about it. Like normally I'd say, hey, if you're going to be using this node constantly, put at least some torches around it, right? So that you can work faster in the dark. However, we're so close to a city, we're not going to have the option to build any type of light source, so we're not going to mess around with that. But I guess while we wait for this node to fill, we can talk about these remaining buttons. Range just means that if you have a ranged weapon in your weapon 1 slot and some ammo, you will use that first before you use your blade, or your side weapon, so to speak. You will use a side weapon if someone engages you in melee, though. Taunt is exactly what you think. You'll try to get enemies to attack you. So if you were to put a tank character in heavy armor who has a high defense and put block on him and taunt, that's one way to kind of do some crowd control. Sneak, obviously, if you want to sneak, you click sneak and you try to sneak by something. Alright, so you'll see here we have 5 units of copper, but the bar is not going up anymore. and our guy's just standing around. And if you click on him, it'll say aimless. That's because the machine is full. So what we can do is withdraw all the copper that's there. And what I really should have done was before the night was over, I should have, before the night came, I should have bought a backpack, but hindsight's 2020. But you'll see here, now that we removed the copper, he's going to start mining again, and the bar will start going up again. The good news, I guess, is that he's so bad at his job, and it's moving so slowly, we'll probably be able to sell this batch of coppers. It'll be morning by the time he's done. Shops open around 6 a.m. a little bit later because the person has to walk from their home to open the door to let you in. But just plan for shops being open around 6:50 and 6:30 every morning. And that's when we'll go in, we'll sell our copper. Right now is kind of, if you're following this guide, it's going to be the most boring part of the game. It's also going to be the most hands-on boring. The ultimate goal here is we're gonna buy our house. We're gonna do a little bit of research, get some storage in there, and then we're gonna. You'll see that this whole process of mining is automated, and what that does is it frees us up first of all from the micromanagement of just sitting here watching this bar go up. But it also means we can have multiple groups of people working multiple nodes, and assuming it's all well set up, it should kind of handle itself flawlessly. And so it's just a matter of waiting for the stuff to come in, selling it in the morning, buying what you need, and then using that money to gear up or tech up or do whatever it is you want to do. So this is the most boring and worst part of the game, but it shouldn't take that long. It's going to move a little bit more slowly because I was hoping to get a free recruit in this town. She's not here right now. I guess we can decide if we want to run over to the next town, see if we can find her. There are inherent risks to that. Namely, you could get beaten up or eaten or die out there. But I think the bonus of having an additional person for free to help with this whole mining process, it'll speed things along. Alright, well, it's just about 6, and I actually don't have any more inventory space. So I am going to leave this. I'll just wait till it's full. Alright. And I'm just going to run into town with the copper that I have at full speed. And you'll actually see, as he's moving, the strength will slowly start to inch up. They're doing a smuggling check. This is standard. We're showing our gear. Different factions consider different items illegal. Some really don't care what you bring in. Some are very strict. For example, Holy Nation, if they find like an AI core on you that's heretical items, they'll attack you on sight. These guys mostly care if you're bringing in drugs, but we're not going the drug smuggling route, so we don't have to worry about them checking our bags. Alright, let's talk to this vendor. Ooh, they got some nice items in here. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to buy from this vendor. Let's talk about backpacks, right? So backpacks are nice because, and let's buy this wooden backpack right here. It's nice because, one, it gives you additional inventory space. If I was to buy this large backpack, or even this thieves backpack, we would have a larger inventory space. But the good thing about the wooden backpack is that you can stack multiple items of the same resource in the backpack up to 9. So you see how it took those 5 units of copper, took up all this inventory space? That would take up just this amount right here, up to 9. And so you could stack in a lot more copper early on. And that's useful. It's also useful for when we decide to leave this town and build our own base. We'll use it to kind of gather all our building materials before we set off. So it's just much more efficient to carry. There are problems with wearing a backpack. As you see here, it gives you a -5 to your combat skill. It gives me a 0.9 modifier to my combat speed, so I'll only be going at 90% of my speed in combat. It's got a 50% negative modifier to stealth and a 50% negative modifier to dodge. This backpack has similar, but actually this one's even worse in terms of the negative modifiers, but it does have more space, but it doesn't stack. The Thieves backpack is really great because the small variant has a smaller extra, area space, but it doesn't have any inherent penalties. And the large one, which has a larger extra inventory space, all it does is give you a -2 to combat. So one of the things we're going to be buying for each character in our squad is going to be a wooden backpack, just so that when they eventually do move bases, everyone can carry a whole bunch of stuff. And we're also going to try to buy a large Thieves backpack for everybody as well. And that's going to be for when we go around exploring ruins or hunting down mobs, just so we can carry the max amount of loot home. And that is pretty much it for it. We may also just want to buy, while we're here, a basic first aid kit. They're very cheap. They can be used to stop bleeding. They're not very effective. It's got a quality of 5 out of 100, meaning it'll only use like your first 5 skill points in first aid to apply first aid. Not that big of a deal. Eventually we're going to want to move on to at least a standard first aid kit. It has more charges. You can use more of your first aid skill. They're a little more expensive to buy. Other stuff in here that's useful. We've got these books. These are going to be used for research, so we'll talk about them later. We've got splint kits. We'll talk about that later when we get into more combat and limb damage and whatnot. It may not be a bad idea just to have a splint kit on us. And I'm just going to move this Holy Flame into my backpack. And I think that's it for what we're going to get. But you got some skeleton repair kits, but you see how I was saying they're very expensive? Like the cheapest version's almost 2,000 cats, the better version's 3,800. So, and you'll see just as quality increases, just the cost increases. So I guess what we can do is go to that copper mine that we were at and grab those other 5 units of copper. And if you want to move a stack of items from one area to another, hold down your shift key and move it, and then you don't have to move it individually. Now you got to be a little bit careful with that, because if you're not moving it to an area that allows for that large of a stack, things can get wonky. But since we've got the wooden backpack, that's what we're going to do. And again, we'll just go in here and we'll sell off our copper. And now we're up to 2,400 cats. We've bought just some medical items. Other stuff to look at. You've got these maps here. We're going to be buying those as well, because they'll give us just kind of the basic lay of the lands. We're not going to buy Tech Hunters library maps or any special maps like engineer or weapon maps, but we are going to buy just the basic maps, because we do want to populate our map with other locations that we haven't visited yet, so when we do want to visit there, we know where they are. Let's run into these bars. I bet you they're just sitting in there. So we got rain, a thief fence, a thief. This person here who I can't seem to ninja. And a shop guard. No, nobody here. Let's run in here. And again, there she is. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, and Oron's here and Kang's here. So either I was completely blind or they must have been walking around when I first started streaming. So that's embarrassing. All right, so let's talk to Ruka. And So before you talk to these unique recruits, you may want to save your game, because if you do say the wrong thing, they may not join you. But we've got Ruka in our party. We're going to edit out all that side stuff just to save time on the video. And we can actually remove this guy's job. And now that we have two people, we can talk about kind of working with more than one person. This game is completely viable to play with just one person. However, and it's actually quite interesting because of the way the combat mechanics work. But now that we have two people, we can send like him to walk here and her to walk here, and they'll do it. We can give them different jobs. But let's talk about kind of group management. So first of all, if you ever want to select everyone in a particular squad, you can just hit your tilde key, and that'll select everybody. If you ever want to just, like, let's say we've got 5 guys here, and we only want to select, these 2, you can click on the first person you want, hold down Shift, click on the second person you want, and these other 3 that imaginary people, they won't be selected. Or you could, let's say, select everybody in your party, and let's say you don't want these 2, just hold down Shift and take them off, and it'll take off them from the selection. So that's useful. Also, now that we have 2 people, let's talk about this section down here, this running guy. Now, as you'll see here, we're going to tell him to run over here to this lamppost, right? Now, you're going to see that lurking is moving a lot faster than Ruka. And that's 2 reasons. One, he's got a higher athletic skill because we just ran him across the map. Also, he's got less encumbrance. If you look at his inventory, he's just got this 2-kilogram club. He's got some pants that weigh 1 kilogram and just a little bit of food and whatnot, right? And we'll give the chew sticks to Ruka just so she has something to munch on. Ruka, on the other hand, has a chain shirt that's 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms worth of drifter pants, another 4 kilograms for her boots, and her weapon, this plank, weighs 12 kilograms. So she's much more encumbered. She's not going to be able to move as fast. Now, if you're just kind of hanging around town, it's fine to have them all running at their fastest speed, because it doesn't matter that much. But you can change the different move speeds, right? You can have people walk or everybody walk, right? I don't know why you would do that unless you have like a roleplay reason. The same thing with this jog. I don't know why you would ever use that. But this just means everybody now that's selected is going to run as fast as they can. And that's fine for here. But let's say you have to move long distances, right? Like, let's say we wanted to run from Squinn back up to the hub. Well, if everyone was running as fast as they could, people would start to just move apart based on how encumbered they were and how skilled they were at athletics. And what this ends up happening is you end up having a daisy chain of people, right? And that's bad. For the first reason is that you have more of a chance to aggro an enemy mob because you have just basically like more surface area to aggro. Also, if you get too far apart, let's say someone gets attacked way back here and most of your fighters are up here. By the time they run back, this person could be dead, enslaved, or just KO'd. So if you're ever just moving long distances someplace in a group, choose this. This is group run, and what that means is that everyone will run as fast as the slowest person in the group. So, if we keep them together now, and we have the group run, they're going to run as fast as Ruka. If we take it off that to run as fast as you can, you're going to see lurking slowly pull away. And that's pretty much it for group tactics. We can also talk about squads. Again, I have a mod here that allows up to like 256 people in a squad, which is ridiculous. Things start to get a little buggy once you have more than 20 people in a squad. But I do have that just in case, so we don't run up against any hard limits in terms of companions. But if you go to your squad tab, right, you'll see a bunch of stuff that you can do. First thing you can do is you've got your basic, your map, your faction information. So these are your relations with different groups you've encountered. Dust Bandits and Starving Bandits. We haven't even met them, but we're at -10. That's because they're bandits, and so they're always going to kind of attack you or mess with you. It goes all the way from -100 to +100. The better your relations are, the more polite people are going to be, the more likely you are to have some kind of help if you need help, and it's useful to have at least one or two major factions that you're on friendly terms with. You can increase your relations with factions by turning in bounties to them. For stuff like starving bandits, there's no real point in maintaining positive relations. They're basically enemy classes. But the other guys like shinobi thieves, we can buy an alliance with them. So we've got that going on. We're not going to talk about research or crafting, but we will talk about squads. Right now, our faction name is Nameless. So let's call ourselves the Lurkers. And then let's go into squads. And you see our squad here is called Nameless Zero. Let's call it something cool like the Guiding Hand, right? And so that means that everybody that's in this squad is going to be kind of shown here. So let's say you've got like a home base. You can have a separate squad for your people that are at your home base, like the people defending the walls and the people, working the crops and making the food. And you could have an adventuring party as well. If you want to add a squad, you just hit Add Squad, and we'll just call them Lurkers 1. And you can move people between these different squads, right? So we'll move Ruka there, and now we've got two different squads. So you could theoretically play with two different people at two different parts of the map. The game itself doesn't lend itself well to that, but you can basically have like people at your home base working jobs and then have another group doing something else, right? If you want to get rid of the squad, you can just move the person back, and you can actually delete the second squad. All right, let's run as fast as we can to this copper node. And we'll just speed up time. And again, I'm just going to hit hold down shift, right click, and use. And both these guys are going to start operating that machine. This guy's coming for a bag check. He can follow us here. I don't care. And so you'll see here that we've got two people working this. So it's moving a little bit faster, even though they're both pretty terrible at their jobs. Now, the name of this game now is we're just going to be mining stuff and selling it all and saving enough money so that we can buy this house over here for 7,200 cats. We're going to want a little bit more than that. We're going to want, I don't know, around 8,000 cats because we're still going to have to rebuild the place. But that's kind of the goal. And it should go pretty quickly because I think each unit of copper is 240 cats. So it doesn't take that long to mine away. We're going to zoom out a little bit just so we can see any enemies if they try to creep up on us. And once this thing is full, we'll move all of the copper into Lurking Lately's backpack. So you'll see that this quickly starts to over-encumber Lurking. Over-encumbrance doesn't really affect him working this node. It will affect his movement speed. So if we are accosted by a bunch of bandits and Lurking's just got way too much copper in his backpack, I'm just going to drop the backpack, run away to the gate guards to kite over the enemies, and then when they've been all beaten up and dealt with, we'll run back and grab the backpack. I've never actually seen the AI steal a backpack on the ground, so I think that's a viable strategy. So over here we've got some dust bandits. They're too far away from us, so they're not going to bother us. If we had a bigger squad, I'd consider running up to them and then cutting them to the gate guards so that we could knock them out, steal their stuff, loot them, and equip their gear. But I don't think the time is... Well, looks like they may run towards us anyways. Let's keep an eye on them. Alright, looks like they got into some kind of fight here with a bone dog. they're going to leave us alone. However, there's no stopping us from running up to this bone dog and looting him. Early game bone dogs will kill you. They're much more powerful, but as soon as you get a little bit of skill, they're not that terrifying. We can also talk about looting enemies. Obviously, right-click, loot to loot. Now, look at this bone dog right here. Oh, he's dead. Okay, well, let's imagine that he wasn't dead, and that instead he was just unconscious. He could potentially survive the bleeding, heal up, get up, and start attacking us. However, if you do loot any item off of an animal, that will move them from an unconscious state to a dead state. So if you ever finish up a fight with a bunch of animals and you're busy healing your guys up, assuming that no one's at risk of dying, it might be worth just tearing at least one piece of item, like animal skin or animal teeth, off of them, and that will make sure that they will stay down. Again, we got dust bandits. They're fairly well behaved if they don't see you, so I doubt they're going to attack these gate guards. They'll probably just walk through town because they have no reason to be aggressive. If we were here, though, they'd probably attack us if we were like around here. But we'll keep an eye on them in case they do cause trouble. Alright, so it's about 6 a.m. We'll grab whatever copper we got. We'll run in with lurking, sell it off. And this should be enough. This should be enough for us to buy the house and what we need to build the house. And we'll turn off jobs just so they don't run back to the copper node. Lurking is obviously moving a lot slower than Ruka because he's got 82 kilograms out of a 16 for his encumbrance, so he's not having a great time, but he's still able to move. So, let's sell off all our copper. I do kind of want to keep the animal skin, just because we will be using animal skins in the future. I will sell off all of those bone dog teeth that we looted. And should I buy anything? There's a lot of stuff that I want to buy, but I'm not going to buy it yet. Right now, you see here we're at 11,172 cats. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this house, click on the for sale amount, and buy it. So now this hunk of junk is ours. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you right off the bat what conditions it's in, but what we're going to do is we're going to tell them both to repair. And when they get over there, you'll see here that it goes from this busted down thing to this. Now when we click on it, we see here that the building condition is 9. So we need a total of 24 building material. We have 9 in it already. So let's go over to that general shop and see how they're doing for building material. Alright, they only have 4 building material. That's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And I'm going to split it between these two. And we'll just go in and we'll build what we can now. We could assign them also just a job by, shift right-clicking build, and that'll add engineering to their queue. It's worth actually just messing around with now, just so we can talk about queue order. So I'm going to shift right-click build, and you'll see now jobs are highlighted for both of these because they were both selected. And so now what it says is basically operate the copper mine, and if you can't do that, then do any engineering job. So that's building or repairs. So you see what's going to happen is as soon as they hit this mark here at 11, they're going to start running back to the copper mine. It's the operating machine. But if we were to move engineering ahead in the queue for both of them and just tell them to walk here, instead of running back to the copper mine, they're going to start engineering. And that's a good thing, because we want them building up this area. I guess Lurking ran out of building materials, so we'll give one from Ruka to him. And yes, it is kind of annoying that they don't just drop off all the material at once. I don't know why they do that, what the design choice for that was. But my guess is it's to make it so you have to build a little bit slower. So right now we're at 13 out of 24 material. I don't want them to actually keep mining. What I do want them to get is more building material. Now, a great place to get something like building material is that way station. So we can go grab it from the way station. Let's first just talk to this guy here. And let's buy a wooden backpack. And we'll give it to Ruka so she can put it on. And now we're going to have them group run. And we're going to select this way station over here. We'll just go just a little bit north of it. And they should automatically run as fast as Ruka. Again, this isn't the safest. If you want it to be super safe, I'd just go back to mining, wait until the next morning, and buy additional building material from that general store. However, the enemies in this area of the map, they aren't the most dangerous, so I'm not too worried about dying here, just going on my way to the way station. Plus, it gives them some athletics training. And it also gives us the option of hiring, what's his name? Who were we talking about earlier? Silvershade. But unfortunately, we don't really have that much money, and he's very hungry. Speaking of hungry, we're probably going to be hungry too. So while we're at this way station, let's go ahead and buy up all of this bartender's dried meat. And he's actually got 18 units, not bad. The amount of different foods they have, it's kind of random. So I know it's kind of an overkill. It seems like an overkill that we're buying all this meat now, but there is a method to my madness here. And now let's buy as much building material as we can. See, this guy has 21 units because we want a research bench, and a research bench costs... Small research bench costs 3. So 11 plus 3 is 14. Let's also buy for some general storage 14, 15, 16. Let's go for 18, right? So they each have a stack of 9. Assuming we have the money for that. So let's get a stack for Lurking. And a stack for... Well, I guess a stack for Ruka. And we ran out of money, actually, here. That's fine. 8 and 8 is good. You know what we can do? We can sell off... I don't really want to, but let's... That's fine. We can always make more money, right? And this is more than enough building material. Let's just even it out between the two of them. And call it a day. And we'll just have them run back to Squinn. They're going to be moving a little bit slower because they're over encumbered. But that's fine. Again, worst case scenario, if we get accosted by something we can't take, and that's going to be pretty much anything, we can always drop the backpacks that are weighing us down and run away from the danger. Hopefully these escaped servants don't get... yes, they're going to give us a bad time. Okay. We don't have the skills to take them on. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop our backpacks. And we're going to move it to slow. We're going to see if we can outrun these guys. Now, we'll always be able to find them because I don't think they actually take the backpacks. If they do, that'll be really sad for us. But so this guy's running at 15 miles per hour, and Aruka's running at 15. So perfect. So they're not going to catch us, I don't believe. So let's just... looks like he's getting close, huh? Let's keep an eye on things. Slow things down a bit. Alright, so you see, what I should have done is put us on passive. Because he's turning around to fight. We don't want that. Let's keep running towards the gates. And as soon as we get to the gates, the guards are going to help us out. Alright. So now what we can do, actually, is turn off passive and try to attack him. Alright, so they just downed that guy before we could even get to him. But let's loot him, see what he's got on him. It's not... He doesn't really have anything that great. His weapon's a little bit better than mine. You see here, it's a rusting blade as opposed to rusted junk. And the modifier's a little bit better. So I guess we can upgrade our weapon. Yeah, we'll grab that. We might as well steal everything, right? And we'll see the guards take out this other escaped servant. And again, we'll attack, even though we're not going to do much. And let's loot this guy, see what he's got. And he's actually got a spring bat. Unfortunately, it's shoddy, so it's not that great. But we will loot it. This is obviously a ranged weapon. And we'll just check. I think this is the same as the other guy had. Yeah. But I can put another weapon here in his first slot. Something to note also on weapons. You cannot dual wield. So basically what happens is, if he has both weapons, both hands that are functioning, he'll use weapon 1 slot. Unless it's a ranged weapon and he doesn't have range toggled. If one of his arms is hurt, he'll move to weapon 2, which is a one-handed weapon. You cannot dual wield. So this will not dual wield, and this definitely won't dual wield. Just so you are aware of that. But let's loot this guy, and let's keep on seeing what else is out here. And that's another 2 escaped servants. So that's all of them. So let's loot them. Unless they pick them up and take them. And he's got another spring bat, but this is a standard spring bat, and that's much more valuable. Let's get rid of... Alright. So let's try again. We really don't need his pants, but we're going to take them anyways. What's the best way to do this? I would say... Let's move this here. Alright, we'll wait for Ruka to catch up. We'll move this. Yeah, all right, come on. Let's keep doing it. And we're going to steal the spring bat. Spring bats aren't that great in terms of weapons to use. They do a good amount of damage, but they're not very accurate. Okay. But we do want it just to sell it. And what we can also do is just strip them. That's what we'll do. We'll strip them over here. And actually, Lurking can wear this. So we'll just put it on. And now he's completely looted. And I look a little bit fancier. Okay, let's go back and get our backpacks. Now that that has been dealt with. But you see the basic idea. We weren't powerful enough to take those 2 guys on. Or those 4 guys, I should say. So we dropped our stuff, and what do we got here? We got Hungry Bandits. We'll avoid them. And we just kited them to the guards. I will say, though, I'll be real embarrassed if this stuff despawned. But it didn't despawn, thankfully. So let's have Lurking pick up 1 backpack. And Ruka can pick up the other. And beautiful. Alright, so let's try again to get back to base. My fear is we're going to run into those starving bandits. But hopefully they've moved on to wherever they're going. Yeah, they're right over here. Awesome. Now, for whatever reason, the starving bandits decided to just try to attack the city. That is very ill-advised. But that's fine. So before we continue, let's talk to this shopkeeper. And sell off our various loots. Now you see here, there's really no point in having the Holy Servant rags because they don't actually have any blunt or cut resistance. So we're just going to get a couple of bucks for them. Same thing with the pants. Doesn't really matter. We are going to get significantly more for this spring bat. And I'm going to sell this worthless iron club. And let's go into Lurking's stuff. And we'll sell the worthless iron club. We'll give Ruka a backup weapon. And we'll sell off these items. And the heavies. And that's pretty much it. Now, I will say this about Ruka. If you look at her stats, she is stronger than us, I believe. Yeah, she's stronger than us. She's much better at fighting. She has much more skills than us in different fighting skills. She's got way more dexterity. However, she does not have the requisite dexterity and strength to wield this plank weapon. It's much more powerful than these clubs that we're using, but I feel like it's actually to her detriment that she's using this. So I am inclined actually to sell this off and have her use the much worse weapon. She doesn't have the skills, the strength, and dexterity to use this well. So let's sell it off. That'll also help with her encumbrance. Now we're going to turn on our jobs again, and they're going to run off and keep building this building that we bought. And as you can see, our building's slowly being built. We're almost there. All right. So now we're gonna go in and take and inspect our building that we own now. If you click on it, you can see here that the door is open, it's unlocked, and it's open to the public. Open to the public means that any random stranger can just walk in and look around. So why would you even want that? Well, there is a technology that's early on that you can have like a shop counter and you can just sell items that you craft. However, this game it was never really well implemented, and customers' money doesn't regenerate naturally. So what happens is, especially in a small town like this, is initially people will come in and buy your items, but eventually they'll run out of money and they'll just stand around and say, I can't afford that, and walk out. So shops aren't that effective in this game. I believe there are mods that fix this problem, but in base vanilla, be careful about that. So we're just going to set our building to private because we're not going to be selling stuff out of our building, and I don't want random people walking into it. People don't like steal from you or anything like that, but it's just kind of I just don't want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a small research bench kind of right here in the corner. To turn it, you've got your instructions down here. So basically I'm using the greater than and less than symbols to pivot. Left click to place it. If you want to undo, you can backspace. Also, you'll see here that one of my options here is change slope, and that's the open bracket and close bracket. If you're playing vanilla, you're not going to have that option. I have a mod installed called Slopeless, and what that allows you to do is it allows you to build into terrain. For example, like you see this building that we bought actually, it's built into this wall here, and that's because the developer had the ability to place it into the wall. And so what the mod does is it gives us that ability. It also gives us the ability to change the slope of the building. So if it's on a hill, we can make it more level than it normally would be. And when you see my eventual site for our base, you'll see why I chose it. But anyways, so we just placed our small research bench. I'm going to confirm that that's what we want. And then I'm going to select everybody and just tell them to build the small research bench. Okay, so the small research bench is done. Now we can talk about technology. If you go into your tech here, you're going to see that you have different categories of tech that you can research. Some of them we can research right away. Some of them are kind of they're red and you can't select them. So let's take a look at this here. So for example, the most important tech that we want right here is storage boxes ore. This is going to be the basis of our automatic kind of mining system. It's not really automatic, but it's a hands-off mining system. So that's the first thing we want to research. There's no requirements to do that. We can just automatically research. Then we're going to go into core, and I'm going to look at item storage, and I'm going to look for food store here. And also, again, there's no requirements. It doesn't take that long to research, so I'm going to research that as well. Now, why is this stuff red? You'll see here that the red is also in the description at the bottom where it says cost and it says book ×2. So if you remember when we were in that travel shop or the general shop, they had books for sale, and we can use those books, place them in our research bench from our inventory, and then use them to conduct more advanced research. Now, we're not going to be conducting too much research right now because we're going to find a designated researcher, but I did want to tell you how that works. And this isn't the only tech in the game. Basically, all this early stuff, you're just going to need to buy books or find books and use them. And then you can move up to tech level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And each time you move up a level, there's more requirements, either more books or more rare items, like ancient science books, engineering research, AI cores, that kind of thing. So feel free to buy as many regular books as you need to research regular texts, but then start to think more carefully and strategically if it requires something more advanced, like an ancient science book, engineering research, and especially an AI core. So I'm going to get rid of this build order for both of them. I'm going to send Ruka just back to do her job and the copper resource because she's much more survivable. I am going to tell Lurking to, I'm going to, left click, left shift, right click, and I'm going to tell him to do research. And so he's going to start researching these 2 research items that I queued up for him. And it should be done in about 4 hours. It's going to take longer than that because it's about to be dark. And there's a penalty for researching in the dark. But there's nothing you can really do about it. So we'll just keep going. I guess what we could also say to Ruka is before she leaves, I'm going to have her buy 2 iron plates. And you will see why in a second. Not in a second, but you will see why shortly. Okay, so she's going to go off and do her thing. I guess while we're at it and we're waiting on all this stuff to work itself out, I'm going to go to camping, build a campfire right here. And you don't need anything to build a campfire. It offers a little bit of light. I don't know if it actually counts as illumination for like when you're working at a research bench or anything like that. However, if you click on it, you'll see that you can input raw meat and get out dried meat. So if we were to hunt certain animals that have raw meat, we could bring it back here and cook it into dry meat, which we can then eat. Certain races can also eat certain foods that others can't. For example, hivers can eat spoiled meat, but just the regular hivers, not the hive princes. I believe that both Scorchlanders and Shek can eat raw meat directly. It's not as nutritious, but it can be done, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we actually researched ore storage, which is the most important thing. So I'm going to tell Ruka to come back here, and while she's doing that, we're going to place down some storage for ore. If I can figure out this camera. Okay. So, I'm going to go to build. I'm going to go to storage. I'm going to storage copper. And I'm going to just put it right here. And then I'm going to also do a storage for ore. And I don't know why, but it's a little more finicky on this side, so I guess we can angle it. I think this is like as good as we're going to get it. Let's just look from the top how it looks. Yeah, that's fine with me. Okay, so I'm just going to confirm, and what we've got here is storage ore and storage copper. Now I'm going to have Ruka, I'm going to shift left click, give her the engineer job, and I'm going to tell her to build this storage for copper first, while Lurking is researching the other stuff. And she's going to use the iron plate that she bought to build copper storage, and now she's moved on to automatically use the other iron plate for just regular ore storage, iron ore. Okay, now you're going to see what the whole point of all that was. And Ruka's going to go out. We'll demonstrate it with Ruka. I'm going to turn off her engineering job as well. Okay, so Lurking lately completed item storage. So while he's in there, actually, I'm going to tell him to go inside. And we're just going to build some storage. So the first storage item I'm going to build is a food store. And we'll put that right there. And we're also going to build just a general storage chest. Storage chests and storage boxes have the same amount of inventory space. However, boxes take up a lot more room. So unless you've got some kind of specific roleplay reason why, I would just say build storage chests. All right. And I'm just going to tell him, I guess he doesn't have any storage material, general, what do you call it, building material. So he can't do anything about it, but I'm going to bring him close to Ruka and just hand off the building material from Ruka to Lurking. And now he does have the material. Unfortunately, I forgot to tell him to do the engineer job, so we'll just manually walk him over here. Okay. So I'm just going to say build, engineer, and build these 2 items. I don't know why he's... Does this need a metal? Oh, he needs iron plates to build general storage. That's fine. So general storage is just where we're going to put stuff like the Holy Flame and maybe the animal skin for now. But we don't need that right now. But what we will do is we're going to take all the food here that Lurking's carrying, and we're just going to put it in our food storage. And then we're going to get rid of the engineer job, and he's going to run back and start operating the copper resources. Now, Ruka's been working on it herself, so let's see what happens now. As you know, up until this point, we have had to manually remove the copper and put it in someone's backpack. All right, so we're coming up on 5 units of copper. Normally we'd have to pause and move it, but now you see Ruka just grabbed it. And where's she going with it? She's running into town. Towards our little home. Running up the steps. And she just dropped it off in our copper storage. So now, if anyone in our group mines either copper or iron ore, they will automatically, once the machine is full, someone will grab it and run it to one of these storage containers. So we no longer have to manually move stuff. We can just set it and forget it while keeping an eye out to make sure no one gets jumped. I'm also going to tell Ruka to drop off all her food. And also, while these guys are working, if they get to a certain amount of hunger, they'll stop their work, run back, grab food from the food store, and then run back and do their job. It's not perfect. I think if we're going to be mining some of these farther away nodes, occasionally gets a little buggy and someone just never leaves and doesn't eat, so you have to keep an eye on their hunger. But the whole process now is much more streamlined because you don't have to do any clicking, right? You're just basically watching these guys do their job. They're going to feed themselves, they're going to mine themselves, they're going to carry the ore back to your home base. And then what you can do is just every morning, you grab whatever ore it is that you mined, you sell it off, and then you use that money to buy some dried meat. You fill up the meat store, and then you use the excess money to hire new characters. You can use it to better equip your characters. You can use it to buy research books so you can do more advanced research. You can use it to buy building materials for a future building, for a future base that you're planning. And this is actually a pretty good spot, I think, to stop the recording. Because if you don't watch anything else by me, what this guide will have done is it'll have taught you how to just set up an automated mining base here in Squinn, so you'll always have a source of income you can fall back on. Fairly easy to do and hands-off. You're going to be able to use that money to equip your people accordingly if you've got a small squad. And then you can just use that money to buy food, buy some better armor, buy some better weapons, go out and adventure, get into fights, come back to your base. You can go out, try to find ruins or see what else is out there in the world. Or you could continue to hang out with me as I kind of just do a let's play and explain further things and why I do them the way I do them in future episodes. But yeah, that's basically the name of the game. You're going to have a steady stream of income. You can buy more people for your squad. You can hire more companions. And this is really all you need as a base to get started into this game. Just a safe place where you can make money and always fall back to if things go south. So I do hope you join me for future episodes. It should be a lot of fun. You should learn additional things and kind of why I do the way I do things. Ultimately, it's important to remember that there's no wrong or right way to play this game, especially if you're willing to use certain exploits. There's completely different gameplay styles you can use that are probably a little more exciting than what we did. But in 5 in-game days, we're well on our way to being prosperous, well teched up, and ready for base building and exploring and fighting and whatnot. So thanks if you watched this whole video. Thanks if you hung out in the stream and watched. And I hope to see you guys again shortly. You all have a wonderful morning, evening, night, whatever time it is that you may be watching this recording.